Perhaps the kinds of demands that are made upon knowledge production by indigenous peoples, the university is simply not equipped to deal with those demands. So the question becomes how to change, how to shape, reform, transform universities, the structures of knowledge production, so that they are adequate to the ethical demands, the political demands that are placed upon them by indigenous peoples and by research with indigenous peoples.
How far would funding agencies go to honor research that truly encapsulates the indigenous heritage of any country, any nation? How far would you go? How far does your pocket stretch to ensure that the indigenous people get some time and energy to immerse themselves in their own heritage and to be part and parcel of a project or process for regenerating a lot of what we have lost?
We are only able to apply these lessons if the funding cycle of research takes account of this.
People brought up the question of kind of contracts and of formalizing these understandings from ahead of time so that when the project goes forward, everybody sort of knows what is going to be coming out of it, and so there's relations of accountability that are built into the projects from the very beginning, which once again I think a lot of people brought up would need a significantly long lead-in time in order to start to build those relationships and to formalize them somewhat in contracts. Ways that the rules that have been set up both at universities but also by the research councils often act as barriers instead of facilitating these relationships. Usually it's the UK-based researchers who have to use their own money in order to make these projects happen.
It was a theme coming through was the financing, which I still struggle with because of my university in terms of all the funds, because there's some work that has to be done where the funds have not gone down to the indigenous population because of the policy and working all of that out. So that's another big issue to be considered.
Given the way that the funding is set up, it's necessarily going to create a series of relations of inequality and power relations among these different levels.
What if we did have more time and maybe that we could have more lead-in time before starting these grants to try and tease out some of the issues in terms of flow of resources, some discussion of the need to realistically cost researchers' time. We also criticised the way the funding system seems to be working, that basically displays a lack of trust.
So we propose a two-phase approach to consideration to funding cycle. One, where there is a qualification, the project is considered positive to go on, and some resources, small resources, are allocated for communities to inform the design tools.
Building that relationship with the indigenous population, we have just realized that it has to extend beyond the life of the AHRC funding.
The publication of indigenous literature is a problem. Most publishers are not ready to invest money and capital in publishing books in indigenous knowledge. Even on occasion like International Mother Tongue Day, which is actually an annual event, the participation of most people is really very minimal. But we expect that on such an occasion, on such an event, exhibitions and fairs and expos that articulate the power of indigenous knowledge through the printed material should really come out, more effectively and more powerfully.
If the fundings come from top down and then the structures from outside in, can we break that where we're doing more between groups from, southern regions just collaborating with each other, not having the need for something like UK to be involved? So can these networks and the funding support that type of facilitation?
You made awareness for the community, but what else? How do you bring a change in community? There's got to be that. So I think we should make a point that any indigenous research must have enough funding or second phase of funding where you have to have some form of development thing tangible in the community.
We